People always said that danger had a way of warning you before it showed up, but Alina had never believed that. In her life, fear didn't come with signs. It came quietly, slipping between the cracks, showing up on nights that should have been ordinary. Just like this one. Her bakery was supposed to be closed, yet she found herself still inside, hands dusty with flour and hair tied back messily as she tried to finish one last batch of dough. She had promised herself she would stop staying so late, but promises were easy to break when work kept her mind where it needed to be, far away from the past she refused to think about. It was the sound behind the shop that made her freeze. Not a loud sound, not even something obvious. Just off. A shift in the air. A faint thud. The muted scrape of something heavy against the ground. Her instincts prickled, telling her she should ignore it and lock the door. Go home. Forget everything. But Alina had never been the type to ignore a noise she didn't understand. She wiped her hands on her apron, slipped toward the back hallway and pushed open the door leading outside. The alley was dim, lit only by the glow of her backlight, and the cold air rushed in harshly against her warm skin. She wasn't prepared for what she saw. Two men in dark coats stood over a body slumped against the brick wall. The body wasn't moving. The man closest to it held a gun, the kind people whispered about but rarely saw. The kind used by men who didn't believe in leaving loose ends. Alina's breath caught in her throat, too sharp, too sudden. She didn't speak. She didn't move. She didn't even step back. The man with the gun turned his head and for a moment their eyes met. Deep, unreadable, winter-cold eyes. He wasn't surprised to see her. That terrified her more than the weapon. He took a single step toward her. Not rushed, not threatening. Controlled. As if everything he did was measured. As if he knew she'd stay frozen exactly where she was. Go inside, he said. His voice held no anger, just a quiet command that left no room for argument. But she didn't move. She couldn't. The alley felt too small, and the world around her shrank until it was just him, the body, and the weight of something she didn't understand pressing against her chest. One of the other men spoke. Boss. Inside, he repeated without looking away from her. She blinked. I didn't see anything. A slight shift touched his expression. Not amusement, not disbelief, just something subtle she couldn't interpret. You saw enough. Her heartbeat pounded painfully against her ribs. She expected him to raise the gun. She expected anger, threat, violence. Anything that felt like the stories people told about dangerous men in the city. But instead he stepped closer until the distance between them shrank to a few feet. His height forced her to tilt her chin up just a little. He studied her, his gaze lingering on her face, her hands, the small tremor she couldn't hide. You're not screaming, he said. I don't scream easily. And you're not running. Running doesn't help. He seemed to absorb every word as though they were pieces of a puzzle he hadn't expected to find. There was silence between them, heavy and strangely intimate. She felt seen in a way that startled her, because this wasn't a man who should have been looking at her with curiosity. His attention flicked to the small pendant at her neck. She instinctively pressed her hand over it. That made something sharpen in his eyes. She didn't like that. What's your name? He asked. She hesitated. Why do you need to know? If you want to walk back into your bakery alive, he said simply, I need to know who you are. There was no threat in his tone, and that was what scared her the most. Threats came from people who could be stopped. Calmness like his came from a man who didn't need to raise his voice to end a life. Alina, she whispered. He nodded once. Go inside, Alina. She stepped back, but before she could turn, he added quietly, and lock the door. She didn't need to be told twice. She slipped back inside, locked the door and pressed her back to it as her hands trembled. She had seen something she shouldn't have, talked to a man she shouldn't know, and felt something she wasn't ready to name. She forced her breath to steady. He should call the police. She should run. He should pack a bag, disappear and never look back. But she didn't move. She stayed exactly where she was until the noise outside faded and silence settled again. The next night she convinced herself nothing would happen. He wouldn't come back. Men like him didn't revisit small bakeries or worry about people like her. But when the door chimed softly at closing time, Alina already knew who it was. He stepped inside without hesitation, dressed in a black coat that suited the cold air outside. His presence filled the small shop the way shadows filled corners. Naturally, inevitably. He walked to the counter and stopped only a foot away, close enough that she could feel the slow intensity of his gaze. You didn't leave, he said. I have a business. You have fear. Yet you stayed. He swallowed. Do you want something? Yes. He didn't elaborate. She cleared her throat, pretending her hands weren't shaking. I have pastries. Bread. Coffee. I don't drink coffee. His eyes didn't leave her face. I came to see you. Her heartbeat stumbled. That's unnecessary. He arched a brow as though the word didn't exist in his world. You saw something you shouldn't have. That makes you my responsibility now. I don't need protection. I didn't say I came to protect you. Her breath caught. She felt unprepared for his honesty, for his presence, for the way he looked at her as if she were already tied to something she didn't understand. What's your name? She asked because it felt wrong to know nothing about the man who could end her life or change it forever. Mikhail Volkov. Her stomach sank. She knew that name. Everyone in the city did. The Bratva king. The man who never forgave, never spared, never hesitated. Yet here he was, standing in her bakery, looking at her with a quiet intensity that made no sense. You shouldn't come here, she said softly. That won't change anything. What do you want from me? He took a slow breath as if choosing his words carefully. I want to understand why you looked at me in an alley filled with danger, and didn't fear me the way others do. Alina said nothing. Mikhail leaned a fraction closer. And more than that, I want to know why I didn't kill you. Her pulse jumped, but not from fear. From confusion. From something deeper, something far more unsettling. Something that felt like the beginning of a storm she wasn't ready to face. Alina didn't sleep that night. She tried, she lay in bed, eyes closed, blankets pulled tightly around her, but her mind wouldn't quiet. Every time she drifted close to sleep, she saw his eyes again. Cold, steady, curious. Mikhail Volkov wasn't a man people encountered twice in their lifetime. Yet he had walked into her bakery like it was the most natural thing in the world. She told herself he wouldn't return. Men like him didn't form habits around ordinary women. But deep down, a quiet part of her knew the truth. Men like him didn't do anything without intention. And whatever his intention was, it involved her. For the next few days she waited for him without admitting she was waiting. Her hands moved through dough without her noticing. Her customers commented on how distracted she looked. She burned 2 trays of pastries, a mistake she hadn't made in years. On the 4th night, when she was finally closing early in hopes of resetting her thoughts, she heard the soft chime of the door. He was there, standing in the dim light of her nearly empty bakery as if the space belonged to him. The cold air from outside clung to his coat, and his presence filled the room in a way she had already become familiar with, even if she didn't want to be. She didn't speak. She simply locked the door behind him, not sure why she did it, habit or instinct. You look tired, he said. I've been busy. You've been thinking. She didn't bother arguing. What do you want this time? A conversation. He paused. An information. Her stomach tightened. About what? You. I already told you my name. There's more to a person than their name. She crossed her arms, trying to keep a safe distance between them. Why does it matter? I'm nobody. His gaze lowered to the pendant around her neck again. Nobody wouldn't wear that. She stiffened immediately. He noticed. Where did you get it? He asked. It's just jewelry. It's not. Mikhail. Alina, he said quietly, stepping closer, don't lie to me. She inhaled slowly, trying to calm the panic that rose instantly inside her. That pendant was the one piece of her past she hadn't managed to escape from. The one thing that could unravel everything. Mikhail watched her with silent expectation, but there was no anger in him. Just patience and a kind of determination she knew she couldn't win against. Finally, she looked away. It belonged to someone in my family. Your father. She hesitated. Yes. He studied her reaction. You don't speak of him with warmth. That's because there's nothing warm about him. Mikhail didn't push further, but the silence between them said he wanted to. Instead, he leaned a hand on the counter as if he was settling in for the long conversation she didn't want to have. Alina, he said finally, you understand that I would not be here if your past didn't concern me. I didn't ask you to care, she whispered. No, he said, But you became my problem the moment you stepped into that alley. She flinched slightly at the reminder. His voice softened, not warm, not gentle, but less harsh than usual. I didn't choose that moment. And neither did you. But what happens after is no longer an accident. She hated that his words settled too deeply inside her. Hated that part of her didn't want him to walk away. But she also knew the truth. She couldn't let her past hurt anyone else. Especially not him. Especially not the men who followed him. You shouldn't get involved, she said. I already am involved, he insisted. Someone wanted you dead. That alone demands answers. She met his eyes. And if I tell you who I am, you'll wish you never asked. Something unreadable flickered in his expression, but he didn't interrupt. Alina exhaled shakily, the weight of the truth pressing against her ribs. She had hidden for years. She had erased everything she once was. But Mikhail was peeling away layers she never meant to reveal. My father is alive, she started slowly, her voice barely above a whisper. But I have no relationship with him. I haven't seen him in years. Why? Because he tried to trade me. Mikhail didn't move, but something cold settled behind his eyes. She continued, her words trembling. He wanted to form an alliance. I was the bargaining chip. I wasn't given a choice. Silence filled the bakery. Heavy. Thick. What happened? He asked. I ran, she whispered. I changed everything, my name, my life, the way I lived. I thought I left it behind. And the man in the alley? Mikhail asked. He came for you. Yes, she said. That's why you should stay away from me. He shook his head once, slow and decisive. No. Mikhail. You think running protects people? He asked quietly. You think disappearing stops a war? It kept me alive. And now it's done, he replied. You're not alone anymore. Those words unsettled her more than anything else he had said. Not because she doubted him, but because a part of her wanted to believe him. Before she could respond, he reached into his coat and pulled out a folded paper. He slid it across the counter. What's this? She asked. Proof that your father's people are looking for you again. Her breath caught. She unfolded the paper with trembling fingers. It was a photograph, grainy, taken from security footage. It was her, leaving her bakery. Mikhail. I traced the source, he said. A rival group. They're planning something. I need you somewhere safe. No, she said quickly. I won't be locked away. It's not a request. He stepped closer, close enough for her to feel the shift in the air, close enough that she could see the faint scar near his jaw she hadn't noticed before. Come with me, he said simply. You'll be protected. No one gets through my walls. Her heart twisted painfully. Why are you doing this? Because if something happens to you, he said quietly, I am the one who will be responsible. Whether I want to be or not. It wasn't a declaration of affection. It wasn't soft or sweet or romantic. It was a truth spoken by a man who didn't pretend to feel what he didn't. But the way he said it made her chest tighten anyway. She looked down at the pendant. Her past had found her. And the only person who could stand between her and that past was the man standing in front of her. Slowly she nodded. Mikhail didn't smile. But something loosened in his posture as if he had been waiting for that answer. Get your things, he said. You won't return here for a while. Alina grabbed her bag, hand shaking as she locked up the bakery one final time. When she stepped outside, Mikhail walked beside her without touching her, yet she felt the gravity of him all the same. Her life as she knew it had ended the moment she opened that alley door. Now she was stepping into a world she once escaped. A world of power, danger, and a king who didn't know how to let go once he claimed something. And she wasn't sure whether she was afraid or relieved. The moment Alina stepped inside Mikhail's estate, she understood why people feared him. The place wasn't decorated with wealth meant to impress anyone. It was functional, guarded, controlled. Every hallway was watched. Every door had a purpose. Every person moved with quiet awareness, as if trained to sense danger before it arrived. It wasn't a palace. It was a fortress. Mikhail guided her through the halls without touching her, yet she felt the pull of his presence more strongly than anyone else she had ever known. You'll stay in this room, he said once they reached a quiet hallway. The door opened into a simple space. A bed, a closet, a window overlooking the courtyard. Alina glanced around. I don't need this much protection. He looked at her for a long moment as if trying to choose whether to respond honestly or gently. In the end he went with honesty. People are coming for you, he said. Your father's people. Others too. I won't risk your safety by pretending otherwise. He swallowed. And what about your men? What risk does protecting me bring to them? They follow my orders. That's not an answer. No, he said calmly. But it's the only one that matters. There was no convincing him otherwise. His decision was made the moment he brought her here. Alina sat on the edge of the bed, exhaustion pulling at her bones. Mikhail remained by the door, watching her with a quiet intensity that made her nerves tighten. You haven't asked me what I want, she said quietly. I don't need to, he replied. You want peace. And you won't get it if you run again. She didn't argue because part of her knew he was right. He finally stepped back. Rest. You'll need it. Then he left, closing the door behind him. Alina lay down, staring at the ceiling, trying to calm her racing heart. She didn't feel trapped, not exactly. But she didn't feel free either. He felt suspended, caught between two lives. One she ran from and one she didn't understand. Hours passed. Darkness settled outside and sleep finally dragged her under. She woke to the sound of shouting. Her eyes snapped open. Footsteps thundered down the hallway. A door slammed. Someone cursed. For a moment she froze, disoriented, heart hammering in her chest. Then the unmistakable sound of gunfire rang out. Her blood ran cold. She jumped from the bed and moved toward the door, but before she reached it, it swung open and Mikhail stepped inside. His coat was gone, his shirt darkened with dust and something else. Something she didn't want to identify. His expression was calm, but his eyes were sharp. They're here, he said. Stay close to me. Before she could respond, he grabbed her hand, not gently but not painfully either, and pulled her behind him. The hallway was filled with noise, but his voice remained steady. Don't let go, he said. He didn't. As they moved through the estate, she saw flashes of what was happening. His men taking position, others dragging injured guards out of the line of fire. The air smelled of smoke. The pressure in her chest tightened with every step. Mikhail, she whispered, this is happening because of me. No, he said firmly. This is happening because they underestimated me. They reached a side exit. Mikhail motioned for her to follow him through a narrow walkway that led to a safe escape route. But before they got halfway across, a sharp cry came from behind them. A voice she recognized. Sergei. Mikhail. They have her. She turned in time to see two armed men dragging one of the younger guards. A boy who had smiled at her earlier, out of the shadows, a gun pressed to his head. Alina stopped in her tracks. Keep moving, Mikhail ordered. They'll kill him, she said. That's not your concern. Yes, it is, she insisted, pulling her hand out of his grip. They want me, not him. If I go, they'll let him go. Alina. She didn't let him finish. She stepped forward, raising her hands slowly. I'm here, she said loudly. You came for me. So take me and leave everyone else alone. The men's eyes lit up with recognition. One of them shoved the guard aside and pulled Alina toward them. A cloth bag went over her head and everything went dark. The last thing she heard before she was dragged away was Mikhail shouting her name, raw, furious, and nothing like his usual controlled tone. When the bag was finally removed, she was inside a warehouse, cold, empty, and filled with the unmistakable sense that nothing good had ever happened here. Several men stood around her. Their leader stepped forward, smirking. Your father sends his regards, he said mockingly. He says you caused enough trouble. Alina's stomach tightened. What do you want? Want? The man laughed. You think this is about what we want? This is about cleaning up the mess you made when you ran. You were supposed to be traded, not protected. Alina swallowed hard. You don't need me. True, he said. But killing you sends a message. Her heart pounded violently. He doesn't care about me. We don't care if he does, the man replied. Your existence is the problem. Alina's throat tightened. For a brief moment she wondered if she had made the biggest mistake of her life by leaving the estate. Mikhail's protection wasn't a cage. It was a shield. And she had stepped out of it willingly. The warehouse door suddenly shook. Everyone turned. A single loud bang echoed through the space, followed by another, each one closer, more deliberate. Alina's breath caught. She recognized the sound, not gunfire but something else. It was footsteps. Someone walked with purpose. Not rushed. Not panicked. And then the door tore open. Mikhail stepped inside. Not with chaos. Not yelling. Not threatening. Just controlled fury. The room went still. His eyes found Alina immediately, and something in his expression shifted. Quiet, dangerous, possessive. "Let her go," he said. The leader chuckled. "Or what?" Mikhail didn't answer. He didn't need to. Within seconds, everything erupted. His men stormed in from the shadows, overpowering the guards with brutal precision. Chaos spread across the room, but Mikhail didn't move until every threat was handled. Then he walked directly toward Alina. She didn't realize she was shaking until he reached her and cupped her face gently, surprisingly gently, thumb brushing her cheek as if to make sure she was real. "You shouldn't have done that," he whispered. "I didn't want your people hurt," she replied. "You think they matter more than you?" She didn't know how to answer that. Mikhail pulled her into his chest briefly, not a tight hold, just enough to steady her breathing, before leading her out of the warehouse. Back at the estate, the Bratva council gathered, furious and alarmed. They accused Mikhail of risking everything for a woman. They warned him that his judgment was slipping. He didn't respond with anger. He simply brought Alina forward, held her hand in full view of the council, and said, "She is with me. If that is a problem, then I am your problem." Silence followed. No one challenged him. Later, when they were alone on the balcony overlooking the courtyard, Alina leaned against the railing, exhausted but stable. "You didn't have to come for me," she whispered. "Yes," he said quietly, standing close beside her. "I did." "Why?" His answer was simple. "Because losing you was never an option." Something inside her softened, not because his words were romantic but because they were real. She looked at him. "So what happens now?" He reached for her hand, lacing their fingers together with a certainty that left no room for doubt. "Now," he said, "you stay with me. And no one touches what's mine." It wasn't a threat. It was a vow. The world outside was dangerous, unpredictable, and full of enemies. But with his hand holding hers for the first time in years, Alina didn't feel alone. She felt chosen. Protected. Bound not by fear but by a connection she couldn't deny anymore. And as the night settled around them, one truth became clear. Whatever came next, they would face it together. Not as a king and a captive, but as two people whose lives had collided in ways neither of them could walk away from.